Good afternoon, everybody.
Hi, welcome everyone. We are doing something new.
We love trying new things. So we've got our new high fidelity kind of studio set up here. Instead of doing a screen share where you can't quite see our faces, we have this beautiful television set up like we're, I don't know, on the local TV news or something like that. So let us know how you like this setup. Hopefully you get a higher fidelity audio experience if you're listening in podcast mode, as kind of most people do. And then we have a bunch of visuals that we're going to share with you today. And then as always, we always do a brochure to go with our fund update webinar. So if you want to see ultra high fidelity photos, we've got lots of really cool construction photos to share with you today. You can check that out. That'll go out with the replay here in a few days as well.
Yeah, so let us know when you get the replay email, even if you've joined us live. If you just hit a reply to that email, it'll land in my inbox. We'd love to hear what you think about this new setup. We're always trying different things, and Nick somehow talked me into doing a webcast or
Yeah,
like a news station or
yeah.
something. So here we go. All right, well let's jump right in. This is our Q3 2025 update. We have 85 slides today. And Nick and I spent probably 30 minutes trying to pare down the slides, and we could not get it under 85. Q3 has been such a busy quarter, which is pretty typical with the seasonality of our business. The leasing season is really busy through the summer, and then Q3 really picks up things in the fall. We start to think about preparation for winter, all of the strategic projects that we want to do. I'm sure you guys are anxious to hear about interest rates and how that's impacting the portfolio. So there is a lot to go. Excited to share all of our updates today. As always, pop your questions into the chat. We try our very best to answer those as we go along. And if we need to answer things at the end, we'll take care of that as well. But we want to make sure that you leave with the updates that you were hoping for. Our usual disclaimer, in our quarterly performances, we do share historic information. So all of that is rooted in fact and the actual performance of the portfolio. But we do also share some forward-looking statements. Those are exactly that, our best predictions of the future. There's no guarantee of any specific outcome. All investing does have risk. If you're considering any investment, talk to your professionals like your CPA or your attorneys before doing so. All of our funds are available to accredited investors only.
And just a little bit about us, if this is your first time being with us today. So my name is Nick Stageberg. This is my wife, Dr. Elaine Stageberg, and we get the privilege to run Black Swan Real Estate together. We have closing in on $500 million in assets under management. We're very vertically integrated, more than most real estate private equity firms, because we own our own property management company. We do in-house maintenance, lawn, snow cleaning, you name it, we do it in-house. We've got quite a few employees. In fact, we're looking at hiring a recruiter just to help us hire more employees because we do so many things in-house. We've raised over $100 million of capital. We actually do have the Secure Freedom Fund open right now. It's about 90% full in our most recent round, but we have a little bit of room left in our current round for Villages Essex Park. We have a real estate sales team. So in the office building that we're sitting in right now, we've got a Keller Williams franchise here where we hang our license, and we have sold going on $250 million in real estate all time. That's pretty cool. And then we do a little bit of ground up construction. So we've done close to 50 or over 50 million now of ground up construction. We just got our certificate of occupancy, our most recent project here in June, and that building in Fund 4 is full, 100% full. Incredible high velocity lease up for that particular building. So that's just a little bit about us and our background and getting to know us if this is your first time joining us.
Yeah, let's talk next about announcements. So the first thing is kind of my big announcement of the year is very excited to share our upcoming visioning workshops. I think this is my 6th or 7th year that I've done either a goal setting or a visioning workshop. So this is all about designing your 2026, whatever the next level is for you. This year we'll be doing 4 nights, November 17th through the 20th. It'll start each night at 7 p.m. Central and go for about an hour, maybe an hour and 15 minutes. Those will be live, and the replays will go out either that evening or the very next day. So please do register. You can scan the QR code there. We'll also have it in the replay email, and you'll get emails for signups as well. Share those with your friends or family, anyone that is committed to creating an amazing 2026. This is the ticket, right? I really believe that consistent visioning is what sets apart kind of that life. If you look back and you're like, wow, where did the year go? Or worse, where did the decade go? And instead feeling like life is even bigger than you could have imagined because you're doing that visioning and you're doing your part. And then there's also that magic that's created from casting that vision and moving toward it. So excited about that. November 17th through the 20th at 7 p.m. Central. Those will be live calls. The replays will go out. We'll have a pop-up Facebook community. We'll have a workbook, all sorts of resources. I'm so excited about what we're putting together this year and can't wait to see many of you there for our visioning workshops for this year. And then our Real Estate Real Life 2025, that happened in Q3. What a fun time.
It's a long quarter.
Yeah, it really was. It was our largest ever event, both in terms of our count, both in person and virtually. And then also we added a day to it so that we could have a roster of amazing speakers and just really jam pack in real estate education, goal setting, visioning, breath work, property tours. You can see some of the pictures there. And the awesome thing was we did a virtual experience the entire time. So all of those replays are available. And if you would like to have that access to those replays, you can find that at rerl2025.com. This was our first year of recording the property tours. So you get all of the access to everything in the ballroom, all of our content, all of our workshops, all of our speakers, the breath work session, which so many people describe as completely life-changing, and then also all of those property tours, which is really the best way to get to know the Black Swan portfolio. We try our absolute best in these quarterly updates to have pictures and stories and all of those sorts of things. But when you are literally walking the properties, as you can imagine, it's just a completely different feel. So really appreciate our team. They're always trying new things too, just like we are. And the effort that they put into getting those virtual captures of our property tours. So you can get your replays at rerl2025.com. And then we would love to invite you to join us either in person here in Rochester or virtually in 2026. The dates are September 17th through the 20th with an optional VIP day on Monday, September 21st. It will be an amazing time. You'll see it with the replays in Real Estate Real Life 2025. You'll get a feel for what the event is like and really how we bring in exactly what the title is. We try to do a lot of real estate teaching, but it's really our belief that the point of having a big portfolio is to build an even bigger life. And so we do a lot of life teaching as well, goal setting, visioning, planning, that breathwork session. And then you get those property tours, and we'll be doing the property tours virtually again this year. We do have a bonus if you join us either in person or virtually for 2026. You'll get complimentary replay access for 2025. So if you'd like to just check out the event, I recommend going to the 2025 replays. But if you're all in for 2026, either in person or virtually, you can go to rerl2026.com. And if you register there, you'll get complimentary access to the 2025 replays.
Awesome.
And then another update is please keep your investor information current. Please log into InvestNext, that's blackswan.investnext.com, and make sure that your address, your social security number, or your EIN, your banking information, your contact information, please do make sure that all of that is up to date. Believe it or not, tax time is right around the corner. We turn over all of our investor information to our accounting team in early January, and we want to make sure that your K-1s are distributed in a timely fashion and that we don't need to have any K-1 corrections. So please make sure that that information is up to date, particularly if you're getting monthly distributions from the Secure Freedom Fund. You absolutely want to make sure that your banking information is up to date. If you have any questions about that, you can reach out to Rachel at blackswanteam.com. But it's always a good idea, like at least once a year, to hop into the portal, make sure everything looks good. Maybe you moved and you forgot to update the address, or you changed your phone number or something like that. We want to make sure that we have all of that information so that you get all of your tax documents on time.
And just a quick status check on the thing that people always are most curious about, and that is our distributions. So there's a chat that people wanted to be able to see the slides more. So we believe that feedback is a gift. So please give us feedback on your audio visual experience you're getting with us here. So Fund 1, we're doing monthly distributions throughout 2024 and 2025. Exactly, we set expectations kind of at the beginning of the year, and we've been able to meet those distribution expectations throughout last year and this year. We've returned close to 20% of all capital in Fund 1 already. Fund 2, we've done monthly distributions throughout the year. 5.3% of capital returns today. And that's a $30 million fund. So it's quite a bit of capital returned on that beast of a fund. Fund 3 and Fund 4, we anticipate being able to start distributions here in early 2026. We'll probably have an announcement, maybe at the end of this year or something like that. Things are in really good shape.
This is the announcement.
Oh, this is the announcement.
This is the big announcement.
Okay. So
yeah, very excited to announce that we'll be doing distributions in Q1 of 2026 for Fund 2 and for Fund 3 and Fund 4. So super excited about that. We're about 12 months ahead of schedule for Fund 4, for Fund 3, about 18 months ahead of schedule for Fund 4, and just super pleased with the performance for both of those funds. Of course, we have all of the slides and updates for that, but we're finally close enough to that time period. We had kind of projected that we were hoping to do those early distributions, and now when we really look at the numbers and look at the performance of everything, we are announcing that we'll be doing our first distributions from those funds in Q1.
And just for reference, we closed on Boulder Ridge in Fund 3 and Fund 4 in March of this year. So 7 months ago. And then we just got our certificate of occupancy for Stonehaven Apartments in June of this year. But, we actually are significantly cash flow positive for the last 30 days in Stonehaven Apartments. So those funds have done just extraordinarily well. And we're ready to start distributions on those funds.
Yeah.
And then also worth calling out, the Secure Freedom Fund is doing its monthly distributions, as expected, and we've had no capital calls. We have no reason to expect capital calls in the future. So
one of the questions that came in, this slide answers that. So we'll be doing distributions for all of the funds through 2026, and we'll do our projections of the amount of those distributions in December of 2025. So you'll get that information via an email that goes out. It'll also go out in Invest Next. We need to see how this quarter goes so that we have the best projections for 2026. So we'll have all of that information about the specifics for our projected distributions for all of the funds for 2026, and we'll get that to you in December of 25.
And then kind of the bookend of that is just reflecting on the timeline. We've got a few assets now closing on $500 million, and we have different investors who are in different vehicles. So we might make this just part of our usual summary. So we've got Fund 1 that closed December 2021, finished its last acquisition in April of 2023. So we bought an entire portfolio of single family homes, got financing on those, and got like an 80% leverage on those, and then used that capital to again buy RDS in the spring of 2023. So that had a long runway, and we made that just a monster fund, a huge fund. Lots of assets under management in that fund. They'll drive long-term returns. Then in Fund 2, that closed in December of 2022, and we had our most recent acquisition in August of 2025. So we bought most of the units in the Riverview, which is a condominium complex. It's 62 units, and we got most of the units, like over 40 of them in our initial acquisition, and we've been purchasing them ever since, which has been a big investment for that vehicle. We still have a couple units left to purchase at Riverview. It's unclear when we will purchase those, but those will be the last 2 acquisitions in that fund. Then Fund 3, we closed in March 2024, and we finished our last acquisition, Boulder Ridge, in March 2025. And then Fund 4 closed in December of 2024, and our final acquisition there was in March 2025 with Boulder Ridge. Though technically, I guess we got our CO in June of 2025. So maybe that's the appropriate date. I'm not sure which to put into that column. So these vehicles are very new, very young vehicles, and we are incredibly proud of the performance that we've been able to deliver to date on those very, very new vehicles.
Yeah, we are now on slide 13 of 85, so we're making good time. But here are the headlines, so that you get kind of the overall arch of the story if you do need to leave us early. But of course, you can catch the replay as well. Q3 was absolutely a quarter of just massive amounts of construction and renovation, really trying to drive value to the portfolio wherever we can. We estimate that we've created at least $5 million of equity in just this last quarter alone, through all of the construction and renovation across the portfolio. Of course, we hosted Real Estate Real Life, our big annual event. Absolutely amazing to have our investors and people who are considering investing, and even people who are just interested in real estate and goal setting. Our Freedom and Legacy members were there. It was on the first day was Nick and I's anniversary, which was super sweet. We love to celebrate our anniversary kind of around the time of.
You do this maneuver. You pivot around to look lovingly at me. I don't know if you do. I'm like, well, yes, here's my wife. And you have to go around the microphone.
Love it. We closed on Rainbow Plaza Apartments. We have some before and after pictures a little bit later in the presentation about the renovations and the improvements that we're doing there. We got another asset under contract just about 10 or 14 days ago. It's a really quick close. We're actually planning on closing later this week, Northern Hills Apartments, which will go into the Secure Freedom Fund. We're moving through our due diligence and our HUD loan assumption for Villages at Essex Park. Our intent is to close on Villages at Essex Park before the end of the year. A lot of that is contingent upon the government shutdown because that is a HUD loan assumption. So we need HUD to finish processing that paperwork. But as of right now, we're still confident that we will close at the end of the year. Let's hope that the government reopens and we can get that paperwork finished. As Nick has mentioned a couple of times, Stonehaven Apartments is full. We got our certificate of occupancy. It's 100% occupied, which is just kind of mind-blowing to be able to fill up a 56-unit apartment community in such a short period of time. And it's really because of the operational excellence and the demand from Stonehaven townhomes that we've been building and working on for the last 5 years. And just knowing the lead flow and the demand that we had there, that's what, gave us the idea to create the apartment community in the first place, was knowing that we had so many leads in that community that wanted something a little smaller and a little more affordable than the townhomes. So instead of doing another round of townhomes, we instead did Stonehaven Apartments, and that projection, worked out just perfectly with being 100% occupied very shortly after getting our certificate of occupancy. We have lots of slides on the transformation at Meadow Park. That story continues to unfold. I would say we're probably 75 or 80% of the way through the transformation there, and really looking forward to getting that massive bolus of work kind of wrapped up. It makes sense in terms of the winter is coming, so we need to get finished with our exterior renovations, and just the community has changed so much. So we have some slides to share on that. And then we also have exciting news to share about our rent growth. If you're following any information about real estate in the broader United States, you may be concerned about rental rates. And you'll see in our portfolio that we continue to have, well above market norm rent growth and all the different reasons that kind of factor into that. So we share rent growth for all of the assets in the portfolio. Those are the headlines. That's what we'll be covering throughout the rest of our time here together. And then also excited to share many thanks to you who voted for us. For the third year in a row, we did win Best Property Management Company in Rochester for Black Swan Living, and Best Apartment Community Residence at Discovery Square was a finalist. These awards are so important, particularly that one for Best Property Management Company. It really helps with our marketing, with our leasing, with generating leads for our leasing team. And if you know anything about sales, you know that the more leads you have, the more appointments you can set for showings. And then when you have that demand, then that drives rental rates. So these things are very important, and we take this very, very seriously to now have 3 years in a row of winning Best Property Management Company. So thank you to all of you that voted. We appreciate that. We know we ask for your votes many times, and it really is very important because it comes up in our marketing, in our digital marketing, our emails, our conversations with prospective residents. So many of the people that are coming to live in Rochester are moving from out of town or out of state. So they're looking to things on the internet like reviews and awards and those sorts of things to help them make their decision. And this is incredibly important for the performance of the portfolio. So I'm excited to share that.
So let's talk a little bit about Hospital of the Future. So that's this staggeringly vast, this $5 billion project that's happening to expand the Mayo Clinic campus in the heart of Rochester. So you see that pink arrow on your screen. So Elaine can point to that now with our new AV setup. So that's where many of our buildings are located, right at the end of that pink arrow. So you can see we have all these new buildings here, these $5 billion worth of buildings, and many of the properties that y'all own are just right on the perimeter of this expanded campus. And the project is in planning for years, for over a decade. This project has been kind of in the works, and then it finally kind of went noisy this year. And boy, oh boy, is it noisy! So if we take a look at the next slide here, you can see the vision of what they're kind of doing and what that overall timeline looks like. This is a 7-year plan, scheduled completion in 2030. I don't know about you, but I've run a few big projects, $20 million projects, and my timelines, as aggressively or conservatively as I set them, they tend to run a little bit long. So maybe they'll hit that 2030 goal. Maybe it'll be a couple years later or something like that. But first building schedule open 2028, and certainly they've been on track so far in terms of their timeline. And we're looking forward to seeing the kind of final finished project. There's this beautiful headline in the newspaper here. the city is preparing for a decade of construction. The city will go through 10 years. Over the next 10 years, the city will go through what most cities experience in 100 years. And we don't think that's an exaggeration. So here's a photo of what it actually looks like in the real world.
So right before we go to that photo, I do want to hop right back to this photo here. I feel like so excited that I can point to the screen. So some of it is just that I want to enjoy that.
Get you a laser pointer.
Yeah, there you go. So these are the existing Mayo Clinic buildings right here. These buildings have been in existence, one since the 1950s, the other since the 1990s. And this is the outpatient part of the Mayo Clinic. So the hospital is actually about a mile away. But anyone who comes to Mayo, they usually see like an internist for their first appointment. And then they go to all the various specialties that they might need. And the majority of that care is right there in those two buildings. So these buildings exist. And then everything that you see here that looks kind of futuristic. So this, all of this, the logistics center, this south parking, all of this is the hospital of the future. This largely has been kind of parking lots, some older administrative buildings, parking ramps. You could kind of get a sense over the last many years that Mayo was kind of agglomerating that land so that they could eventually do something with it. I don't think anyone really expected that it would be, an expansion of this size. And then over here with the pink arrow, this is Zick, this is Lofts, this is Uptown Landing, and then there continues to be more buildings over here. Kind of Nicholas Apartments would be sort of like right here on the map. That's owned by Fund One. So that gives you some sense of like literally the hospital of the future is, outside of the street where cars will move on is going to touch assets that are owned in the Black Swan portfolio. So I wanted to give you kind of a better glimpse of that. At any time you can go Google Bold Forward Unbound. It is a fascinating study. And I think understanding the hospital of the future is a big part of understanding the Black Swan portfolio and why we are so committed to Rochester and so committed to Minnesota. So take a look at that. And kind of, what they're doing in terms of innovation and not just building a huge campus, but truly building the hospital of the future and changing how the practice of medicine is done, not just for the patients here at Mayo, but for patients across the entire world. So I wanted to kind of jump into a little bit of that. And then this is a fun picture. So if you're, as long as it's safe, you're not driving or something, and you're able to take a look at the screen, this next picture here is pretty neat. So here we are standing on the roof of Zick Apartments. This is myself and a visitor that we had in town. And this is what you see when you're on the roof of Zick Apartments that is owned in the Black Swan portfolio. Here are the existing buildings that I pointed to. And then everything here, just cranes and bulldozers. They're building a tunnel underground for all of the logistics. It is just a sight to behold. Like even if you have no interest whatsoever in construction, there's just a sense of the awe and the magnificence and the scale of what is happening here. And to be able to experience that so up close with the Black Swan portfolio is really a treat. It certainly does put a little bit of pressure on the portfolio right now, as you might imagine. There's noise, there's dust, there's just kind of a hubbub. Mayo is wonderful to work with. They stay in very close communication with us. They give us all sorts of updates that we can then pass on to our residents. And our residents are generally understanding because they're, if they're living in this part of the portfolio, they're part of Mayo in some way, most likely. But there is a little bit of a headwind right now as we're going through the construction process, which we anticipate will last for many years during that lengthy construction phase. But when we're on the other side of that, and this portfolio is literally touching the hospital of the future, we're just so excited about all of the potential and the value that comes from that for decades to come.
And we're going to do some industry updates here. First one is that 100% bonus depreciation is back. This is retrospective back to January 2025. That's a huge win for funds 3 and 4 because Boulder Ridge is now eligible for that. We've already ordered the cost segregation study for Boulder Ridge, and then also obviously a huge advantage for Secure Freedom Fund with the many assets that are being bought in that fund this year. Right this second, we're still planning on being able to close before the end of the year for Villages Essex Park. Hopefully the government opens soon so that they can process our loan assumption and we're able to close on time. But this is a huge win being able to share massive amounts of depreciation with y'all, with our investors in these buildings.
Let's talk about interest rates. Yeah, that's what everybody wants to talk about.
Interest rates. So we don't usually spend a ton of time talking about this. As Warren Buffett says, predicting rain doesn't count, building arcs does. We feel like we've built a $500 million arc, and we've been able to protect, preserve, and grow a lot of investors' capital at a time of extraordinary uncertainty in the marketplace, in a time when a lot of other groups have experienced capital loss or had capital calls. And so we're unbelievably proud of that. So we take these things into account, but we plan for rain, and we build the arc. So this is our slide from our last quarterly update, where we talked about how, watch what Trump does. Don't bother listening to what he says. Right now, the government is buying short bonds. That is to say that they're typically selling treasuries or borrowing money in 5 and 30-year increments and stuff like that. Right now, they're buying like 1-year bonds, which means that they are expecting that rates will go down in the future, and they'll be able to borrow money at a lower cost in the future. And there's some political things happening. We try to stay out of politics, but we try to think very clearly about what potential impacts that could have on interest rates in the economy in the future, and how we can use that knowledge to best protect our investors. And so we said that we expected interest rates would be going down. And since then, there's a 1/4 point reduction at the September 17th FOMC meeting. And there is a 98.9% chance of another 1/4 point cut here on October 29th, here at the end of October. So how are we able to make these very specific predictions? So anyone can go to the CME FedWatch tool. You can Google that or whatever. And there's people who are much smarter than us that look at all the up-to-date data and watch the same data points that the Fed chairs watch, and probably have like private eyes assigned to them and stuff, because there's vast fortunes that hinge on these policy decisions. And we don't bother doing any of that research. We just try to draft off of the research of others, just like how Burger King tends to just build across the street from McDonald's instead of doing millions of dollars of their own demographic research. So if you look at this grid, you can see right now the market is pricing in a 98.9% expectation of a rate cut here.
You want to point to it?
Yeah. Oh, heck yeah. Yeah, there we go. 98.9%. This is so, I feel like a little TV anchor or something. This is great. Or a big TV anchor. I don't know. All right, we got lots of people online right now, actually. So then you can see that there is a 96.3% chance of another cut in the December meeting. And then there's a 54% chance, and the blue box is just the most likely outcome. So there's like a 54% chance of another rate cut in the January 28th meeting, but there's also like a 43% chance that there won't be. And so you can have a pretty good range of expectations of what that looks like. And this might remind you of the dot plot graph that we've mentioned before in other webinars that we do. So the dot plot is produced by the Fed chairs, but it's not like this is maybe has a little more specificity, not to be confused with accuracy, but this has a little more specificity to it. We look at all these tools to get some idea of it. So what does this mean? This means that, for example, if we wanted to go get a loan product right now, we might get a forward-looking rate product, because the market is expecting rates to be lower in the future. So we might get a swap where we can trade floating for fixed rate debt and lock in a lower interest rate on future debt. Or we might get something that's indexed off of treasury rates, which treasury rates are forward looking, not looking at Fed rates so much. So here's the treasury rate chart. And you can see on
the first thing Nick looks at every morning as soon as he wakes up.
Sadly, yeah. So, I mean, this is a 5-year chart of the 5-year treasury rate. And this is really the story of the commercial real estate market in the United States. So back in the COVID era, rates were at super low, all-time low rates. And then in 2022, if you remember, in December 2021, we talked about how the pandemic was coming to an end and rates were about to skyrocket, faster than ever before, and rent rates shot way up. And then they've been kind of steady at this somewhat high level compared to, like the last 20, 30 years of data. And then you can see here on the very right-hand side of this chart, rates just hit their kind of like 12-year low with with it kind of lining up with this dip we had last fall. And here's where we locked in some critical loans, particularly RDS, on a swap product, on a forward-looking rate product right here. So we're looking at this. We're looking at the the CME FedWatch tool. We're looking at treasury rates, and we're thinking, man, like maybe Q1 of next year might be a good time to look at doing some refinance executions on different properties. So this is good news. Who knows what the future may hold? Rates could shoot up. Expectations could change for the Fed. Lots of different things could happen. But right now, the future is looking a lot brighter than it has at different points in the past, and we're looking forward to a future of lower interest rates. Probably not as low as COVID. That's probably never coming back, but probably maybe a full percentage point lower than they are today, and that will be extraordinarily helpful for our portfolio and for our investors.
So the two things that really matter the most in commercial real estate are interest rates and NOI. Those are the two things that kind of come together that determines the value of a property. Interest rate is a surrogate for cap rate. NOI and cap rate determines the value of a property, and then the interest rate determines how much you can borrow against it. So whether you're doing a cash out refi or you're selling it to someone, they're going to be getting debt on it. So we just talked about interest rates, and then the second most important piece of that is rent growth and talking about revenue. So let's talk about how rent is doing in the portfolio.
So here's some data from CoStar. That's a data subscription service that we pay a huge amount of money to subscribe to. And for a while, rent growth was actually negative. There was negative rent growth, and year-over-year rent growth, even in like Austin, Texas today, is -7%. The Sun Belt continues to get hammered in terms of rental rate. But nationally, it's less than 1% rent growth, somewhere in that territory. Normally, you'd hope to see at least 2% rent growth. It's a big deal. It's a really big deal. Between 0 or 2% is big. Let's contrast that here with the Black Swan portfolio. So our average per unit rental rate on renewals only is up 6.97% year over year. So our rent growth is actually much higher than that because we are doing renovations and then placing new tenants at significantly higher rental rates. So I think it's like a little bit cheating to try to compare, national average rent growth, because most people aren't doing the crazy construction that we're doing. So just looking at renewals alone, which a lot of properties are seeing negative rent growth on renewals right now. So if you're paying $1,000 a month right now, your renewal offer might be $975 a month in probably more than half of the zip codes in the country right now. We are seeing positive 7% year-over-year rent growth on renewals alone. So we've got a couple fun charts here. This is our year-over-year rent growth. So you can see that that's not just like a one-time thing. We're consistent. In fact, it's actually down a little bit just because of the season that we're in. At one point, it was north of 8% on our renewal rent growth alone. That's just staggering rent growth. And that's maintaining a 60% average renewal rate. One of our properties is actually an 80% renewal rate and still has like 9% escalation on average. So here's our renewal rate on the bottom and our escalation rate on the top. This is something that I spend a lot of time on. I personally review every single renewal decision that we make. We have made big changes to our leasing team and how they're compensated and how all those systems work, and we're continuing to pour into that. We never stop making our assets look better. And we'll talk more about that here in just a minute. We have full-time people that literally just go around to our assets and just make sure they look and feel amazing. It helps that our portfolio is not all rehab. So at one point in 2022, like the first half of 2022, about a quarter of our entire portfolio, and this is like a $200 million portfolio at the time, a quarter of it was down for renovations. It was that things like we've done a lot of rehabs this quarter, but man, it was crazy back then. It's easier to grow rent when you're not living in a big job site. And then the Rochester market has done much better than average as well. So a lot of it is our excellence, but Rochester's seeing probably like a 2% positive rent growth rate. So like more than double, triple the national average. And then we're like doing triple, quadruple what Rochester is doing. And that's how we're getting a 6, 8x, 10x delta over kind of market averages. So here we've got this bifurcated into funds and stuff like that. So Nicholas and Oliver in Fund 1, you can see we've drastically improved rental rates there. Over 30-35% rent growth since we acquired that asset. We've got all the different buildings in Fund 2. So just an example, Colby has gone from $700 a month, $750, $725 a month to over $1,000 per month on average. That's a big high watermark that we crossed. Hamptons, you can see that we doubled the rental rate on Hamptons there. So just huge success in terms of our rental rates. We love talking about net operating income because that at the end of the day, like that's how your loans are sized. That's what determines your profitability. There's lots of ways you can like manipulate NOI. So whenever I'm trying to evaluate how is another operator doing, I look at rent growth. I look at rent growth because the market tells you it's very hard to manipulate rent growth. Like the rent is the rent. And the market, the people who live in those buildings, they are telling you how that operator is doing far better than any spreadsheet or analysis ever could. People want to live in those buildings. They're operated well, improvements are being made. When you can double rent, and in some cases in Tacoma, we have tripled the rental rate, that tells you that we're doing something right and we're creating a lot of value for the people who live in those buildings. Here's Fund Fund 3. And so you can see Uptown Apartments. We've had very significant rent growth there, which is incredible given that we've only had it for 1 year. And we did not do a big value add there. And then Georgetown, what an incredible story there. Staggering rent growth at Georgetown. And this is an income restricted property. This is a property where people would say that you can't grow rent, but we've just delivered value. And in addition to that rent growth, tenants are now paying their own utility bills. There's lots of additional upside there. And then some rent growth charts there for Secure Freedom Fund. So here are our Tacoma properties, and you can see, like at Garfield, for example, we've more than doubled rent at Garfield, just a staggering climb there. Tanara, we've increased rent by more than 50% since we bought that. Kensington and Lauriston, it's a more incremental jump because we just finished renovations and we kind of did the renovations really quickly there. So we'd expect more trailing rent growth as that rent roll continues to improve in that mature building. And then if you look at Baycrest and Bayswater, we've had, again, staggering rent growth for Bayswater, given that it too is an income restricted property where people might say, well, you can't make it better. And then Baycrest, you'll get to see some stark photos of the improvements we've made to Baycrest. So we've had those assets a small amount of time, but still had like incredible rent growth at a time when the industry is not seeing rent growth. I could not be more proud of our team's outcomes.
Let's talk next about asset overwatch. As Nick mentioned, that's a big part of rent growth, right? Is that marketing and leasing goes into getting someone to live in a property initially. And then the thing that gets them to stay is customer service, maintenance, that the building looks nice, that they feel welcome and home there. And a lot of that goes into what we call asset overwatch. So asset overwatch is a higher level care and feeding of the properties than say like your daily maintenance or your daily cleaning. That's handled by our maintenance and our facilities team. Asset Overwatch is a dedicated team of people that examines the properties and thinks about all of the things that make a property feel nice, right? So those little things, like we might see it other buildings that it just like drives us crazy when signs are taped with scotch tape to the windows and everything's like folded over and yellowed, like just little things like that kind of send a signal to the residents about the overall living experience there. We spend a lot of time on asset overwatch in Q3, Q4, and Q1. And then the end of Q1, Q2, and even a little bit of Q3 is really all about that busy leasing season in the portfolio. So through Q3 is really when we start to really ramp up the asset overwatch. It happens all year long, but everything is seasonal in the business. So earlier this quarter, Nick walked every single common area of every apartment building with 2 members of our team. All of the exteriors, all of the interiors, made the slide says hundreds of actions items, but I think it's probably at least 1,000.
I think it's about a 1,000 point checklist.
Yeah, I don't think it's thousands.
Yeah,
I think that's
it's about
probably
1,000 items. Yeah.
But all of the things across the entire portfolio, of all of the attention that everything needs in the portfolio. And then why don't you speak to the camera rollout that we're doing throughout the portfolio?
Yeah, so we have been slowly rolling out this really incredible internet product to the entire portfolio. We're going to speak to that in just a minute. And now that we have this blanket of insanely fast and reliable high-speed Wi-Fi across the portfolio, we can now connect high-tech camera products to it. The cost and capability of those camera products has just improved in leaps and bounds over the years. And so we're seeing an increasingly dramatic ROI from installing those camera products. So as we're going through and doing that asset overwatch work, we're upgrading or just installing camera systems for the first time. So apartment buildings used to have camera systems that were local. They were very hard to access online. They didn't work very well. Typically, most of these properties have like a somewhat defunct camera system in place when we buy them that's not connected to the internet, that you have to call service technicians to come out and fix all the time. And so we're installing kind of best-in-class camera systems throughout the portfolio in conjunction with those asset overwatch efforts. So if you're looking at these photos, I recommend taking a look at this. So we've got on the left here, just literally having our team go through and just find trash that's been hidden in our assets. They'll like roll up a mattress like a taco and shove it underneath a stairwell, like all the way around. So literally I walked every single stairwell of every single property, and you have to like kind of crawl around, and there's always some kind of trash that someone has squirreled away back there, and you have to round it all up. And we own 2 box trucks, 2 industrial box trucks. We have all sorts of equipment for moving this bulky waste around. In the center here, you can see where we've weeded a flower bed. So this is crazy, but we figured out that when you hire landscapers to like weed a flower bed, they just kind of rip out the leaves. They don't take out the root, and you can't really tell. So we have to like hire our staff to actually rip out the weeds to get the roots out. people where, they are accountable to us for years to come. So if there's weeds next spring, we're like, hey, you didn't do a very good job. Then we put down really, really high quality anti-weed fabric and then rock instead of mulch. So it's a big investment in terms of labor materials. But then, that reduces kind of the long-term maintenance and then just practical things. So in this picture here, you can see there's like a path that's worn in the dirt where people are walking. And so I'm like walking with my team. I'm like, hey, we've got some rocks here. Can we just like relocate? And this is like a beautiful, landscaping area. And, I think some landlords would just ignore this. Others would try to like put up a fence to try to stop people, but people are there's a traffic pattern here for a reason. So can we just like move the rocks here so that there's this beautiful, path for people to follow and it doesn't look yucky where there's this like traffic pattern through what should be, a mulch bed or something like that. So literally walking through every single interior, exterior common area and putting together, 6 months of action items for multiple full-time employees.
It may seem in the weeds, literally, literally,
That's good.
that this is what we do with the portfolio, but we really think this is what sets us apart. We are so much more than asset managers. We are so much more than looking at spreadsheets and looking at interest rates and reversion caps and all of this sort of thing. We are in our properties, right? We are always thinking through the eyes of the people who are touring those properties for a place to live, who are living there, who are making decisions on renewals, who are making decisions on referring their friends and family into the portfolio. And being in the portfolio is such a huge part of what we do. And I really think it sets us apart that the owners of this nearly $500 million portfolio are walking it consistently or meeting with our team on a very regular basis, guiding the work, creating the checklists. And I hope we never stop doing this work. I think that especially asset Overwatch work is really where a ton of value is created. Operations, management, renovation, and then asset Overwatch. Those are kind of the main categories of things that you can control, right? You can't control interest rates. You can't control things like population change. You can choose where you invest, but once you're in that market, there's not a lot you can do for population change. So there's some things that you need to be aware of and understand and be very cognizant of, but the things that you can change are the things that you need to be spending most of your time on. And this is a perfect example of that. The next one is the internet upgrade.
Yeah.
An example of bringing technical expertise from Nick's prior career in technology and thinking about how can we drive more value to the portfolio? How can we create additional revenue streams for the portfolio while creating a really high quality experience for residents that truly is not available in any other portfolio in the entire city, and doing so in a way that's very profitable?
So what most property management companies do is they get paid, the management company, not the building, the management company gets paid five or ten or $20,000 by an internet service provider to come in, frequently kind of like rip out or disable or break the old internet cable television services, install new cable television services, and then if there's a certain level of uptake on those services, the property management company gets like an ongoing cut, a percentage of 5% or 3% or 7%. It's such a widespread practice that you can even hire an agent who goes out and negotiates these, I think, kind of value extraction contracts on behalf on so the building loses money, the tenants lose money, and the property management company wins, and the cable company wins because they have a forced monopoly. And you sometimes live in an apartment building and you go to buy internet services, like, man, my internet's like $100 a month. Why is it so expensive? Well, because the cable company, the internet company knows they have a monopoly, so they have a special rates for your building where you pay a lot more money, and then they pay that revenue share up to the management company. We've never felt good about that, and there's contracts like that in every aspect of the business. I get solicited on a daily basis by companies like towing companies. Hey, we'll give you $5,000 if we're allowed to tow away anyone. Like one of our new employees that was just hired. They moved into their apartment unit at a nearby apartment complex that we don't manage, and their car was towed their first night there because they hadn't yet put the parking sticker on their car. So there's just all these predatory contracts, and we don't believe in that. So we have an agreement with Metronet, who they're the highest quality internet service provider in the area. They can install high speed fiber to your unit internet services. They install a dedicated router in every single unit, so you're not sharing that Wi-Fi with other people. And if someone else is using the internet, that doesn't slow you down. Big deal for people who are doing remote work. We pay no upfront cost, but we also don't get any kind of like bonus or anything like that when they install their services. We've negotiated them all the way down to $35 a month for symmetric gigabit service. And then we resell that to our tenants for $60 a month, which is still cheaper than anyone else can get that service Retail cost anywhere in the city is usually 70 to $100 for that comparable service. So it's cheaper for the tenants. The cable company loves it because they don't have to do any kind of customer service, do connections and disconnections. The money just shows up. And then critically, we can use that Wi-Fi because we control it. We can use that Wi-Fi to run smart devices, so smart thermostats, security cameras, door locks, and then we're often able to get free phone lines and stuff like that that further reduce expenses to the property. What does that look like financially? So let's look at RDS, where we just installed this upgraded internet product here in the last 30 days, which is no small feat. This was an insane effort for everyone involved. So assume that you're making $25 per unit per month in profit, and then we save about $150 a month in some free phone lines that I was able to negotiate in the contract. So we're profiting about $3,750 per month, or about 3,900, including you're pulling me. Okay. You're leading me to point to my bullet points. I like that. Okay. So 47,000 in net operating income created. Worth noting that this replaced a prior very unprofitable contract with a different company that was just a horrible deal. I'm sure the management company got an insane, like a $50,000 bonus to sign this, 5 or 6 year agreement on it. So altogether, we improved net operating income about $91,000 here in the last month at RDS. That's such an insane amount of savings that we've been able to create, and a why that we've been able to create at a 5% capitalization rate, which is about a 20x multiple on the net operating income in terms of how a building is valued. If you're not familiar with that concept, we can't dig into that too deeply right now. But an apartment building of this class typically gets about a 20x multiple of income in terms of its value. So you multiply that $91,000 by 20x, and we've increased the value of RDS by about $1.8 million here in the last month as we've upgraded that internet service. And just as a bonus, we can now run. There's about 40 smart thermostats we have in that building. This building is huge. It's an entire city block. This is an enormous building. So there's literally 40 smart thermostats, 50 cameras, a building-wide door control system. There's like a Luxor package locker system. We've got a whole guest Wi-Fi network on the rooftop terrace. We've got TVs in the fitness centers and stuff. And we're able to replace, so many things, so many technical systems with this. So we added 1.8 million to the value of this particular building with that particular rollout. Across the portfolio, we've driven probably about $10 million of value with the rollout of this internet system. We've had probably 10 to 30 hours a week of person allocation to this, because we have to get technicians into units, into common areas, so people, we're on like a very close first name basis with all the different data cabling technicians. I texted them last night and I'm like, hey, how are things going? Is there anything I can do to help you? And one of their guys got into some car accident and stuff. We're trying to, can we help you get your van back online or whatever? We need you installing internet at our properties as fast as possible. We've rolled out to most buildings in the portfolio at this time, though there's still some to go. And there's a couple we probably won't do, like Georgetown and Rainbow Plaza, because like Rainbow Plaza is not in the service area for Metronet right now, and some other reasons. So altogether, about $10 million of value created in the portfolio with this pretty brutally negotiated, clever internet system. And that does not include the value of having control of the largest contiguous Wi-Fi network in southeastern Minnesota. That actually sounds really cool saying that out loud. We could do something with that. We could like start our own telecom provider or something like that. We've got something. I mean, someone would pay a lot of money for access to that. That's pretty cool. Yeah.
So that's an example of how, we can't control interest rates, right? We can only study interest rates, but we can control net operating income. We can control the value of the property. And those are the things that appraisers are looking at, that banks are looking at when they're thinking about loan proceeds. So not just construction, but continuing to add value to the portfolio for years after we acquire buildings through asset overwatch, through things like internet upgrades. We've talked about water conservation and energy conservation on some of our other quarterly updates, but thought it would be fun to talk about the internet. I think it's been a couple of years. I think the last time we shared about the internet upgrades was probably right when we first started.
Many years,
this massive
effort.
Rollout. Next up is our construction updates. As we shared in the Q3 highlights, one of the main stories of quarter three is that this has been a quarter of massive construction and renovation. We renovated over 100 units. 100 units. That's more than one unit per day, every single day, coming into the pipeline in just Q3. That is a staggering amount of throughput with our team, with our construction team, with vendors to supplement all of that. Not as much as we were doing in 2022. I think there's a part of me that maybe hopes we're never as busy as 2022 again.
Those are long days in 2022.
But 100 units across a portfolio of about 2,300 units total is a really steady clip for bringing units out of renovation. We've completed 3 exterior remodels, or we're in the process of working on 3 exterior remodels. One here in Rochester at Meadow Park, and then 2 in Tacoma, Bayswater, and Baycrest. We have photos of all of that. Hundreds of toilet upgrades. Those are critical for.
We have toilet videos for y'all.
Yep, stay tuned. Toilet videos are coming. Critical for resident comfort, for minimizing maintenance calls, for minimizing calls for clogged toilets, and then most importantly, particularly in the buildings where we pay for the water, which is most apartment communities, right? Single family homes pay for their own water. Most apartment communities, even like duplexes, the owner pays the water. And so when you can lower utility bills, just like with the internet, it's a staggering improvement in the value of the property. Lots of interior renovations throughout. We did some unit splits at RDS. We have that on the next slide. We spent about $5 million in renovations alone in Q3, like just a staggering amount of money every single day, managing hundreds of people across the portfolio. And it's our estimation based on the lifespan of the portfolio and kind of seeing this pattern over and over and over again, that for about every dollar that we spend in construction, it generates about $1 or more of equity. Our goal that we're striving for is about $2 of equity, right? That really justifies the time and the effort and the creativity that had to go into that. And of course, a lot of that is dependent on interest rates, right? And how much equity you're able to pull out of a property. But we always want to make sure we're at least getting every single dollar back. And then ideally we're working toward like a 2x multiple. So across the whole portfolio, which is about 450 million, probably at least 5 million of equity created in this quarter alone, and maybe even more like 10 million, depending on the final valuation of those properties when they do go into third-party appraisal. Let's talk about the unit splits at RDS. This is a smaller component of RDS. I don't think it's anything we've shared before, but RDS has always had a large master lease with University of Minnesota Rochester for student housing. The upperclassmen of University of Minnesota Rochester, many of them live in RDS. And so what they did when they were building the building is they kind of merged 2 units together, right? You might think about like kind of dorm style. There may be, say, like 1 kitchen and 1 bathroom and then multiple bedrooms. And that's kind of what they were trying to create there. But inherently, that's much less valuable as an apartment community. And our hope is to have a many-year, many-decade relationship with University of Minnesota Rochester, and to continue to operate these as student housing. But we wanted to make sure that we had the units split into proper units as early as possible, because you just never know. Building code changes, regulation changes, we didn't have any specific sort of threat in mind, but we've just been in the industry long enough to know that the longer something perpetuates in a building, the harder it is to get the city to allow you to change it. And so we said, these units were never designed in the original blueprint to be merged units. That was a negotiation with University of Minnesota Rochester to make it feel more like student housing. So we want to go back and make them more like traditional apartment units. And we did that during the summer while the students were out of school. And you can see here how we split the units. Do you want to speak to kind of the specifics?
Yeah, so this was such a huge trust building exercise, because when we first bought RDS just a couple years ago, they were ready to terminate their lease. They were like a month away from terminating their lease. And today they would say that they do business with about 100 different landlords in the state of Minnesota, and they would say that we are their favorite landlord. I'm sure they say that about multiple people, but they really like us. So it took a lot of trust to say, hey, while you all are renting these units, if you could let us know when the students are leaving, when they're going to come back, we're going to sneak some construction crews in there, and we're going to build out new demising walls. We're going to get all the plumbing, electrical inspections that need to be done, waiting on government inspectors and permits. We're going to install these new kitchens and stuff like that. and everything will be done by the time the new students come in. We promise. It was a big trust building exercise because they don't want their new students coming into, they are 100% occupied. Ours is their only student housing building in their entire campus that's 100% occupied. Many of their other buildings are like 70% occupied, which is not uncommon in student housing. And they've significantly increased their enrollment this year. People love our building for UMR, and they're very nervous about this, but they trust us. So we went in, we just installed new demising walls between these units that we've highlighted in red. And previously, one of the kitchens had been removed, and we added that kitchen back in, and we talked them through how really this is creating value for them. They're getting, so their lease rate did not go up, and now they get more kitchens and more individual units. And yeah, they were looking for that kind of dorm style housing originally, but we kind of pointed out the advantages to this. So this was just a win-win-win type thing. This was a significant expenditure. We spent probably about 50,000, and we haven't tallied everything up. Could be slightly more than that. We did this in-house with our own. We have 2 licensed general contractors on staff. We don't like bill for those services. Typically a GC would mark those services up, $30,000 or something like that, probably for such a high precision, low dollar figure job or something like that. We don't mark those services up at all. We just want to create value for our building, for our investors. So this was a very tricky job, but I feel very confident that we created massive value because I know if we went to the city, let's say UMR vacates 10 years from now, and we want to split those units back up. I bet we'd have to $1 million of upcoding or something like that at that time. Whereas if, early in the life of the building, we say, no, we just want to take it back to the blueprints. We were able to get those approvals without doing really any upcoding at all.
Yeah. So those are kind of our updates for the overall portfolio. And now we'll go into our fund specific updates. First, we'll talk about the Secure Freedom Fund. Huge announcement that's literally like no more than 24 hours old, maybe at most 48 hours old. The Secure Freedom Fund is now officially the biggest fund in the Black Swan portfolio. That honor was previously held by Fund 2. Fund 2 is a $30 million fund, and the Secure Freedom Fund is at something like 30 million and a few hundred thousand. Like truly, it just rolled over in the last couple of days. So that's huge. By the end of the year, when we close on Villages at Essex Park and Northern Hills apartment, we'll have about 100 million in assets under management in just this fund alone. As we've shared, Northern Hills Apartments is under contract. We're working on the HUD loan assumption so that we can close on Villages at Essex Park. And there is still a little bit of opportunity. I think it might be maybe $1 million or $1.5 million that you could invest in the Secure Freedom Fund. SecureFreedomFund.com. If you're joining us new, the minimum is $25,000. If you're an existing investor and you would like to add to your position, you can do so with less than $25,000 as long as it's in increments of $1,000. Just email either myself or Rachel and we can manually set that paperwork up for you. We did do a webinar for Secure Freedom Fund late last week, so that replay is available on YouTube. I'm sure Rachel will link it here. We can also pop it in the replay email as well, where there's kind of a more holistic update on the Secure Freedom Fund, but we're going to share probably about 80% of those updates here. Meadow Park Apartments has been the story of the Secure Freedom Fund since April when we acquired this asset. 90 unit community plus 110 storage garage units. The most challenging asset we've ever acquired in terms of the scale and just the extreme complexity of the renovation that was needed there. It was in such abysmal shape that it was an all cash purchase. We acquired it for $4 million cash in April. And sit down, because this is a big number. We've spent about $3 million in renovation. So not quite 1-to-1, but getting pretty close, which is what we projected. We're kind of right on budget for our renovations there. But just kind of wrap your mind around the idea that you could acquire an asset and then need to double the amount of cash that goes into it. That's how bad Meadow Park was when we first acquired it. And we've done all of that in 9 months. And it is just, it's more than night and day. It's like different years. It's just so amazing. Basically, any surface in the entire structure, there's 3 buildings plus those 100 units. If it exists, we've touched it. You can kind of think of it. The value estimated today is at least $7 million, maybe more than that, right? A lot of that depends on the appraisal. About $1.4 million of safety and security created for investors. Our vacancy peaked at 46% in July as we worked through vacating residents who were past due or weren't cooperating with pest remediation or where there was criminal activity. We got up to 46% and we're down to 27% today, which puts us on track for a 10% cash on cash rate of return, whether or not we finance this. So eventually, likely sometime next year, when we finish the renovation, interest rates stabilize a little bit, we will put financing on this building, and then those dollars will allow us to acquire the next asset in the Secure Freedom Fund to continue to grow that total portfolio size in the Secure Freedom Fund. But right now we hold this one with all cash. We'll finish up the renovations, get a nice clean T3, T6, probably not a T12 because we don't want to hold it in cash that long, but as much as the bank needs in terms of showing the consistent performance of the asset, and then we'll work on getting this refinanced. Here's some of the before. This is literally the only slide I've ever had to edit in our entire like multi-year history. So this is what the maintenance team was doing before. This is, I don't know, duct tape, and I don't know what.
It's a series of notes saying, "Don't touch this." Then no, I'm going to touch it. Hey, dumb person, after you unplug this, no, plug it back in. Then finally, someone took an entire roll of duct tape to secure the plug to the outlet. So the maintenance people were involved in this, horrible feud or something like that around. So you can imagine not a lot of maintenance tickets were getting done with that kind of culture.
I kid you not, the plumbing leaks were remedied with spray foam insulation. I mean, some of it you just had to laugh at it. I mean, it was just so comical. You could be upset, sure, right? But like this is just useless energy. It'll just burn out your team. You just kind of had to chuckle and say, okay, there's approximately 250 plumbing leaks that we need to remedy. Let's get to it. Here we go. The before fire EMS were there all of the time. I think we shared some stats in the first weekend after we owned it. It was
14 drug deals our first day that we owned the property that we just observed with the cameras on the parking lot.
Yeah. So as we've shared before, we've really involved the police. We no longer have police presence there now because the feeling of the community has changed so much. But in the beginning, we had police there. And in Rochester, you can essentially rent law enforcement at an hourly rate. We had police there to make sure our team was safe, to send signal to the residents that petty crime and that drug dealing that was not going to be tolerated anymore. And today, the amount of law enforcement and EMS involvement is what I would consider to be normal for a community of this size, right? When you have this many people, there will always be someone who needs to call 911 or something like that. But certainly not that kind of daily presence, right? That was sucking up so many city resources. So very pleased for the value that we've been able to create for the portfolio, but also for the community as a whole, right? So the police and EMS and fire, they can be tending to real emergencies in the community and not essentially kind of doing the job of property management, which is kind of what was happening before because no one was managing the place. It kind of fell to the city to manage it, and we don't think that that's right. Want to talk about the milestones?
Yeah, there's a lot that happened in Q3. We got a photo there of our new mailbox postal locker system. So when we bought the property, it's so unsafe that management had to receive packages. Well, as you can imagine, that's basically a full-time job, managing packages for a 90-unit community. And now the buildings are so safe, so secured, so surveilled that we can actually have real mailboxes. Previously, the mailboxes have been vandalized, people breaking into the mailboxes and destroying them to steal mail, which is actually a felony offense, one of the few things you can actually go to jail for these days. And we were able to get this to a place where we could have mailboxes. It just says so much about the community when you can have packages sitting out in the common area and there's not a risk of immediate package theft. We've done huge amounts of renovations. It was 47% vacant at the start of this quarter. So half vacant, which was actually worse than kind of when we occupied it or when we purchased it, because it was occupied by not great tenants, we'll say, but vacant units are a whole different kind of liability. At one point, we actually installed temporary cameras in all those vacant units just to make sure things were okay. We actually had very few, if any, kind of safety incidents. Our entire time there, I don't think anything was stolen. Certainly, no one was ever harmed. We've renovated 40 units. We've completely redone all the electrical. We've ripped off the siding from two of the buildings and started installing new exteriors. You can see kind of the before on the left, the messy middle in the the middle there, and then getting close to an after picture on the right. We're deleting the mansard, roofs, those upper siding pieces that make it look so dated. They'll have this kind of clean, beautiful finished product. And to give you a dramatic before and after here, this is, one of the units had suffered a catastrophic fire. So there's literally, a melted child's crib and beds and stuff like that. And it had just been left like this for a year prior to our acquisition. And then that is a photo of the unit on the right there. There's no lights on. It's lit with like flashlights because getting the power turned on to a burn unit is a very complex regulatory process. So we've completely renovated the unit, but we still need to go through a few more regulatory hurdles to get the power turned back on. So these are some after photos of some of our renovated units. Just an insane transformation, completely transforming not just this apartment complex, but I mean that entire like part of town. This was just an epicenter of Rochester's like a very utopian, clean, safe community, and this was like one of the few bad places in Rochester. And when you clean up the worst house on the block, the whole block changes. So we're just so unbelievably proud of the work that we've been able to do with this asset. So much so that we took our investors through it at Real Estate Real Life. We walked them through the commentaries. We walked them through that burn unit, and it is just so cool to be able to show these things off to our investors. The good that their money does on Main Street. It's a powerful thing to see, to feel, to smell.
You're making me all teary-eyed. It was so fun. We have a new asset under contract for the Secure Freedom Fund. This one is like moving fast. I think we got it under contract like 10 days ago. We're closing this week. This is called Northern Hills Apartments, 32 units. It was originally built as all separate condominiums. So we're acquiring all 32 of those, all 2-bed, 1-bath with in-unit laundry and central HVAC. All of our due diligence is complete. We're closing in 2 days, $3 million purchase price, which is about $94,000 per unit. We'll be doing a seller carry for $2.4 million at 5.75% for 3 years with interest-only payments. We were able to negotiate that for tax reasons for the seller. This is more competitive than any financing we'd be able to get from a bank, and then it gives us 3 years to do our value add plan to trend interest rates over the next couple of years, and then to really strike at the most opportune time to do the cash out refi on this. So bringing about $600,000 plus the cost for the renovations from the Secure Freedom Fund. We'll do our typical water conservation plan here, paint all of the exteriors, do some light renovations to the interiors. The asset is actually in like pretty good shape. It's a little bit dated, but it's in good condition. And we have found that kind of moderate unit renovations is really what's working right now with the market conditions. We'll do that internet upgrade that we talked about several slides ago, really work on marketing and leasing. There's literally no pictures of this community on the whole internet, right? So
I don't know how anyone lives there. There's no advertising for it anywhere.
I think the property management company just kind of drafts off of other assets in their portfolio. But for a 32 unit, it really ought to have its own dedicated marketing. This is a photo that we took with our drone. And then this place also does not allow pets, which was, pretty common, even 10 years ago to not allow pets. That was one of the early distinguishing features we had of the Black Swan portfolio, was that we allowed pets. When we first built our portfolio and we allowed pets, we were very different. I mean, literally people would say like, I don't care about anything except that my dog can live here. Can I sign the lease? Nowadays, not allowing pets is actually, much less common. So even by allowing pets here, not only does it change the feel of the community, but you're able to raise the overall rental rate because people will even consider it, right? Where as kind of the things that people sort of think about with their checklist is usually bedroom count, bathroom count, are pets allowed, and then in-unit laundry. Those are kind of a checklist that you're either sort of in or out as people are doing shopping. So we'll be implementing our usual pet-friendly policies that we have across the whole portfolio. Villages at Essex Park, no major update during this webinar. We did finish all of our due diligence, which from our perspective was a major update. 288 units across something like 16 acres is a massive due diligence. We had professionals of every type: a roofer, a plumber, an arborist, a hardscaping vendor, a landscaping vendor. I mean, radon, asphalt, like you name it. If there was a surface, we had some sort of professional there examining every single thing, right? Because when you're at $40 million purchase price, 288 units, 15 plus acres, one small thing that you miss could be $500,000, $1 million, many million, right? If it's something like a catastrophic plumbing or something like that. After all of that due diligence, we did negotiate a $500,000 discount. So we're down to 40.4 million for the purchase price. And then we gave a list of many remediations to the seller, and they're working through those. Overall, very pleased with our due diligence at Villages at Essex Park. For an asset of this size, we felt like it was in generally like pretty good shape. We found, kind of about the number of things that we expected to find. And then, we're able to negotiate that $500,000 discount for the things that, we felt like were maybe a little out of line with what had been shared with us, like in the offering memorandum and the original offer period. So very pleased with the time period where we've been under contract on Villages at Essex Park, and really just need the government to open back up and
That'd be nice.
and sign our paperwork.
So just a quick background on Northern Place Apartments is what launched Secure Freedom Fund. And now that we're almost a year in, we can see some of our outcomes in Secure Freedom Fund here. We started out at $778 a month average rental rate. We're up to $1,035 per unit per month. That is a staggering climb to achieve in less than a year. We are on track to hit a 20% cash on cash rate of return on this asset. So we've delivered about $250K of cash flow while we're renovating it, and then spent about $350K on those renovations. This is some before and after with the kind of common areas before on the left and after on the right. Could not be more happy with our outcomes there. Here's what these renovated units look like. So we kept the, these were premium cabinets when they were installed, but that style of cabinets, a European style of cabinet, is, it's not a modern style, but it's a nice clean unit, new flooring, socket switches, or not sockets and switches. There's strict electrical regulatory stuff in that particular municipality. So no sockets or switches, but we did faucets and fixtures and that sort of thing. And the units just look like $1 million. And then here's Rainbow Plaza. We just closed on this in Q3. So August 2025, we closed on this particular asset. So here you see
This is our latest actual acquisition.
This is our most recent acquisition.
Yeah, until we close on November Health this week.
Yeah, we're on track to hit a 12% cash on cash rate of return on this particular asset. 105 units in Anoka, Minnesota. Could not be happier with the start that we're off to on that particular asset. So we've already renovated quite a few units just in the short period of time that we've had it. We had everything kind of ready to go. We spent $30,000 on a landscaping overhaul. And you can actually see some of that in that photo. Landscaping looks just vastly superior to how it looked before. We updated a bunch of common area stuff, HVAC improvements. In the next slide here, you can see the before. You walk in and there's this grand atrium that has like the original 1970 light fixture. It's decades old. It's a very dated looking light fixture. You can see in the slide on the right, that's a different perspective on the same room. There were multiple of these super dated chandeliers, 2-story glass. So we put in this modern, you can see there's like 20 pendants, hanging pendants. So we put in 3 of those in that room, did some paint, did some flooring, did some signage, and it is, you walk in before, and it's like, is this a museum I'm walking into? I'm confused. Yeah, I was literally confused. Like, am I in an apartment building? What is this? And then, when you walk in today, it feels like a crisp, modern building. And we spent, $5,000 or maybe $7,000 on that entire interior work. Here's a before and after in the unit. So you can see there's this very dated vanity setup. Like, you can tell this is a 1970s vanity setup on the left, and then the kind of cute green tile or whatever in the shower, and then on the right,
mold.
Yeah, and mold, of course. And then on the right, you can see we have a modern vanity, modern Niagara water saving toilet, beautiful framed mirror, updated the vent cover, updated the light fixture, and then you can see the tub and surround. We did an epoxy job on that, and so it looks just crisp and new and
step
modern.
out of frame, you can show the tub there.
We've updated the hardware, shower head, everything, and then we did an epoxy coat on the shower, even painted the valance on the fire sprinkler head. So it just looks like a crisp, modern bathroom. So we kept the kitchen cabinets and stuff in most of the units, but it's just great. Here is the corridor. So on the left, you see there's like literally stained carpet, very dated carpet, mismatching carpet. The walls are all dinged up. It has this really weird fire extinguisher alcove right there that's like wood grain. I've never seen a wood grain, like someone made a fire extinguisher alcove out of wood. Somehow that doesn't compute in my brain. You'd think it'd be a fire resistant material or something like that. And so you can see the renovated corridors on the right. We still haven't updated all the light fixtures, but we're updating every single sconce in the hallway to a beautiful modern integrated LED sconce. So on the left, you can see, it had this really just old kind of matted, carpet that, a lot of landlords, what they do is they re-stretch and shampoo this carpet. And then there's some rolled vinyl, and we replace it all with beautiful luxury vinyl plank flooring. And here's a kind of a snapshot of a finished unit. So this whole renovation here is probably less than $10,000, less than 10 grand to transform this unit from a very weird dated unit, because like some things were kind of updated, some not. Like it had every single window is new, every single deck door is new, so it has black frame windows. Those windows cost like 50% more than white frame, so they like spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on premium windows next to your wood grain doors, next to your old carpet, next to your white dishwasher and stainless steel range. And so we're just making it cohesive and crisp and modern feeling. And we've had phenomenal outcomes so far initially.
Next up is Commerce Drive. We closed on this May of 2025, $4.65 million purchase price, $3.6 million in a loan, 1.10 million for the down payment. And this is our headquarters. This is our office building, 100% occupied with ourselves, Keller Williams, a dentist, Allstate, a couple other tenants here in the building. We've done some moderate renovations, and we're on track to deliver a 20% cash on cash rate of return here. So you can see the exterior here. This is our new lobby. We're even continuing to work on like a built-in desk here for when people first come into our lobby with a beverage station and everything. But this is what we were able to put together with things that we had available in the portfolio. And then I know we're running really low on time, but I'm sure you want to share this story of the toilets.
Yeah, so when we bought the office building, the number one feedback item from all the tenants in the building, especially from the ladies, was that the toilets had to be like plunged daily. They were very susceptible to clogs. So we installed our water saving toilets that are quite clog proof. So if you click on the image, it should be, yeah. You can drag that over there, and I think that should work.
Oh, Rachel's saying we can't hear the video. So do you want to tell us what you're saying here?
Okay. Just that what I was saying, that the number one feedback item. So this was a Saturday. You can just let the video play. I can speak over it for a moment. But just yeah, you can just let it play for 1 second there. So I came in on like the Saturday after we closed on the purchase to install these, ultra high priority toilets. And so this is, I brought in these boxes, and I literally just finished installing a toilet, and some random, tenant in the building came in. So there's a sign right next to that toilet that says, "Hold handle until it flushes completely," because it was so easy to clog the toilet. So I tear down this sign to like, this is ridiculous. This is completely absurd that someone at some point had to put up a sign saying, "Please hold the handle down," instead of replacing the toilet. So some improvements we made here.
We try not to take ourselves too seriously with our almost $500 million portfolio. All right, let's talk about Fund 4, $12 million fund outside of Secure Freedom Fund. This is our newest fund. It owns Stonehaven Apartments and half each of Georgetown Townhomes and Boulder Ridge. The other half of those assets is owned by Fund 3. And as we shared earlier, we'll do our first distribution for Fund 4 in Q1 of 2026. Stonehaven is complete. We finished 2 weeks ahead of schedule. We finished 400,000 under budget, which is saying a lot for any construction project, period, but particularly during times with such challenging labor, inflation, supply shortages. I mean, you name it, right? The industry is definitely still recovering in that post-pandemic era. So to finish 400,000 under budget was just such a staggering win. We're 100% leased. We did have some lease up rental rates, but very happy to share that we had no free rent concessions because there was just such strong demand for the asset right out of the gate. Originally, our lofty pro forma for our rent roll target is $97,500 per month, and we're already at $91,795. So very close to our pro forma in just a few months after officially moving everyone into the building. We were cash flow positive $7,500 last month. So to go from, first announcing this at all in summer of 24 to now being cash flow positive, just like 14,
Incredible.
15 months later, is a really staggering performance for Stonehaven Apartments, and really is part of the fueling of what is going to allow us to do the distribution starting in 2026. Also, really good news. You can see here this piece of land, if you could point to that, kind of help orient people first to Stonehaven Townhomes, and then to Stonehaven Apartments.
I'm sorry. Here's Stonehaven Townhomes, and here's Stonehaven Apartments in Fund 4 right here.
Yeah. And then right there in that red box, an entrepreneur paid right around $2 million to build a sports and entertainment complex. So just you couldn't hope for a better neighbor, right? In multifamily, you don't necessarily want more multifamily housing, right? Because that's a direct competitor to you. You want something that adds value to your residents, but even things like, say, a Walmart or a Costco, maybe they can be a little bit obnoxious because of the traffic patterns, right? People love those places, but maybe don't necessarily want to live right next door to them. So there's really just kind of this narrow box of things that you hope for, right? Maybe a restaurant or a strip center with like a salon and a haircutting place and those sorts of things. That's actually on the other side of Stonehaven Apartments. So excited for this local entrepreneur who bought this land and will be building a sports and entertainment complex. I think it's really going to elevate this whole area, and both Stonehaven Apartments and Stonehaven Townhomes will really benefit from the creation of this amenity in Byron. Next up, we have Fund 3, a $15 million fund closed in February of last year. And we'll share some updates here. So for Georgetown and Boulder Ridge, which are half owned by Fund 3 and Fund 4, as Nick mentioned, Georgetown is just doing extremely well. It's one of our best performing assets, I think, ever in the history of the portfolio.
Yeah.
We've owned it just a little over a year. We acquired it in August of 2024, and we're already at 86,000 of positive cash flow in the last 12 months. And that's despite spending a little over $500,000 on renovations. So it has funded all of its own renovations and then also generated positive cash flow.
Put zero cash into that asset since we closed on it, that's never happened before. Usually we've got to have a lot of cash influx to bankroll $500,000 of renovations in a year.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of the things here you've seen in the last quarterly updates, or when we first announced the acquisition. We did that water saving project with all of the toilets. We did the gas meter upgrade so that we could split out all of those gas meters so that residents could be responsible for their own natural gas costs. Brought our utility bills down from $28,000 to $4,000. We got our property taxes reduced because this is affordable housing. So our county, in fact, the whole state has a program for property tax reduction for affordable housing. We have a 76% renewal rate, which is the highest in the entire portfolio, which really speaks to the fact that people want to live here. And that's despite our rent escalations. And then also some of the lowest vacancy in the entire portfolio, even through that kind of moderate construction phase. Oftentimes that construction will lead to some non-renewals, right? People will say like, there's just kind of, too much hubbub in the community. And we didn't experience that at Georgetown. So you can see over there with the green bars, the rent escalations that have happened since we've closed on this asset. Very pleased with Georgetown. Boulder Ridge closed Q1 of this year, so not quite a year old for our ownership of Boulder Ridge. Boulder Ridge has been a massive renovation. At some points throughout the summer, we were doing up to 15 units concurrently just at this one asset alone, 4 full-time staff members there. When I think about kind of resource allocation through 2025, it was Boulder Ridge and Meadow Park. They're about the same size. Boulder Ridge is much larger because the units are much larger, but the unit count is approximately the same size. And Boulder Ridge was in nowhere near the poor physical condition that Meadow Park was, but it needed a lot of effort because it had been pretty poorly managed by the prior ownership. One of the kind of objective ways to think about that is this asset has a HUD loan, and as part of a HUD loan, HUD gives a score of the care of the property. When we closed, it was a 1, which means that it's on the watch list. It's kind of the naughty list. You can think of that, and that that was part of the reason that the seller was dispositioning the asset in the first place. They realized that they had grown, far too quickly to be able to keep up with operations. So they were doing the wise thing, which was shrinking their portfolio. And we are now at a 3, which is about the fastest that you can go in terms of getting those HUD improvements. They're not just going to, jump you from a 1 to a 5, right? They want to see that you have, proven success and proven track record of taking good care of the asset, taking care of your maintenance tickets. So a huge improvement. We're now no longer on the watch list. We're in kind of the usual bucket with our HUD score, and then we'll continue to work toward that 4 and that 5. We've already achieved our pro forma rents. When we first acquired it, we were at $1,775 for in-place rents. In our pro forma, we had $2,000, and we're now at $2,140. So it's wonderful to be able to surpass our pro forma during the stabilization period while all of those renovations are happening, while we're improving our standing with HUD. So super pleased with the performance at Boulder Ridge. I feel like a little bit of exhaustion just talking about it.
It's an exhausting project.
It's been a literal boulder to move.
Yes.
How about that?
These units are enormous.
I'm not even a
They're
dad, and
enormous
I can tell
units,
dad
right?
jokes.
Yeah, it's like $20,000 just to do paint and flooring because the units are.
You didn't laugh at my joke.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
It was a good joke. Trying to move us forward. How do you be proud of me?
Go ahead on Bayswater.
Yeah, so Bayswater, this has been a spectacular success. So we bought this. This is a Section 42 LIHTC income restricted property, and the LURA was set to expire shortly after we purchased it. So we purchased this asset here in kind of the early part of 2024, and this has basically been a holding operation, and we're waiting for the LURA to expire, fixing a number of egregious management issues. So there were multiple abandoned units that we assumed, which is like very difficult to go through a transition. It's like, well, there's people's stuff here, but no people here. What's going on? So we cured all those egregious issues. We had basically zero turnover when we got a unit that had people in it. We very slowly and carefully filled those remaining vacancies, thinking about the future. We kept one unit vacant and then did a huge renovation on that unit as kind of a proof of concept for kind of our future financing to prove what's possible. And then we just finished some really incredible heavy exterior renovations. So we can see some visuals of those. So on the left is the before with some tired and kind of dangerous decks that we've since remediated. It has the Bavarian style trim where there's kind of trim pieces going around, kind of the exterior facades that look like a, I don't know, 15th century German house or something like that. And so we took all that down, gave it a modern paint scheme, painted the carports, and now it looks like just a crisp, clean, modern garden cell apartments. And we have a potential financing opportunity, coming up here in the immediate future, probably the next 90 days, as that LURA expires. We go into the off ramp period, and it can be operated as a standard market rate property. So very successful quarter for Bayswater. Baycrest, this was kind of on the back burner for a little bit as we were pouring resources into Tanara and Kensington and Lauriston. And now as Kensington and Lauriston is wrapped up, those resources, we've really poured those into Baycrest. So you can see, rents have been largely stable for the first year of ownership. And a lot of it was just kind of stabilizing things and make sure things, kind of what it needs to be. But we're now in the throes of renovations, and Tacoma and now state of Washington has some pretty strict laws regarding how and when you can turn over units. You have to give long notice periods and stuff like that. So it took some time to queue all that up as well. And that value pipeline, it's timing out really well. So you can see on the left is the before of the exteriors of the building, where there was like literally some tattered, disgusting awnings and stuff like that. And now you can see we put in like a metal roof on the upper level, and then some canvas awnings below, modern paint scheme, and it just looks like a beautiful, crisp, modern building. And we've got 5 units that we're doing deep renovations on. This particular building, it's not a huge building, so we're going to be able to renovate a significant percentage of the units in a short period of time, and race to to stabilization on this asset, and then be positioned to to do some future refi, if rates continue to trend the way they've been trending. So very exciting at Baycrest. Fund 2. So we're just kind of sharing updates on the assets that had the most amount of activity. Tara Villa, this is like the 500-pound gorilla of Fund 2, and it
really of the whole portfolio.
Of the whole portfolio, yeah. And this is an asset that had a slow start, lots of regulatory compliance issues. Like the municipality refused to give us permits to expand parking. So after like a year of fighting, we eventually put down gravel and stapled canvas straps approximating lines to the ground And they let us do that as though it's like a construction site parking lot or something like that. There are so many grand compromises made in our challenges with the municipality on this deal, but man, things are moving fast right now. So we closed on, kind of our second tranche of construction financing because it's a huge project, and we had multiple tranches of construction financing for it. So financing to renovate 60 additional units. I'm sorry. Make sure I'm reading this correct here. Yeah, 60 units, and we got permits issued for 43 of those 60. So we had ramped up our construction pipeline previous, to closing on the construction loan, and we're down to 17 or so of the remaining. 25 units that were remaining at the start of the quarter, and at the end of the quarter, we had completed 17 of those. So there's just a handful of units that are left to renovate. It has been an extremely successful year for Tenara, on an asset that frankly was having a tough time. It was probably having a tougher time than any other asset in the portfolio prior to this year. This has been a good year for Tenara. This has been a very good year for Tenara.
You want to share the rent growth?
Rent growth is it's bananas. So lease we have a lease in place, a couple leases now, over $2,000 a month all in. When we started, there were some leases that were well under $1,000 per month. So our blended average there is about 1150 a month, and now we're trending up to 1,500 a month. So, and you can see it wasn't growing much for a little while there, and then it kind of took off like a rocket as we finally got our kind of permits and regulatory stuff squared away. So here's some afters. These units were pretty rough units, and this is just an astonishing transformation that we've been able to make happen on a relatively affordable budget at Tenara Villa Apartments. Kensington and Lauriston, also in Fund 2. This property finished, on time, on budget. These are two 100-year-old buildings. Those can be incredibly tricky buildings to renovate. All the units got either a light or a heavy renovation. I think our total renovation cost is quite reasonable on these projects, and it was kind of down to the wire. Your construction loan has a finite amount of time, and they're doing routine inspections, and they don't like it if you go over, which on new construction makes sense, but for renovating existing building is frankly kind of silly. But we hit it. It was a real kind of full court press at the end, but we hit it. And then we had a whole bunch of vacant units we needed to lease. They're gorgeous units, but still it's a lot of units to lease in a short period of time, and we've been able to lease those units successfully. I would say we have depressed rental rates because we had to lease so many units so quickly, right at the end. And I expect to see a significant kind of tail to the rent growth on this asset now that it's stabilized.
I love what we did here at this community. These two, they're not neighbors. There's one building in between them, but they kind of function as neighbors. That's why we always talk about them together, Kensington and Lauriston. And they're in this like very walkable part of Tacoma, just gorgeous area all around. And we really tried to kind of bring in that sort of urban loft feel with our cabinet choices and backsplash. And these units are just stunning. A lot of what we did in Tacoma with our trim choices is what we brought into Meadow Park. So Tacoma is a little bit more of a fashion forward market than Rochester. And so we tested a lot of what we wanted to do in our Rochester portfolio in Tacoma, largely at Tenara and in Kensington and Lauriston that you can see here. And then if you remember back to the slides for Meadow Park, we did dark trim there. That was the first time we had done dark trim in Rochester. Not only is it gorgeous, it's a little bit of a differentiator when people are touring various properties, and it's also much easier to maintain than white trim. So a little bit of design, a little bit of function when we're thinking about those choices. And then Fund 1. For Fund 1, we have an update on the single family homes. This is the Rochester Market Report that's put out by Keller Williams for the entire MLS each month. Rochester Homes Fund 1, which is owned by Fund 1, owns 30 single family homes. You can see here the year-to-date home price in Rochester is up 8.7% year over year from September 24 to September 25, 8.7%. The single family home market in Rochester has been so sticky, and it has performed so well despite interest rates. So a lot of markets throughout the country, as interest rates went up, right, homeowners were not able to get mortgages, and maybe investors left the market because it's so much harder to cash flow. And so home prices have come down, but we've not seen that in Rochester. And that's largely because of the Hospital of the Future and Destination Medical Center and just the really strong economics here in Rochester. So we estimate that there's been about 300,000 of organic appreciation on this portfolio alone in the last 12 months. And keep in mind that Fund 1 is only an $11 million fund altogether. So
incredible.
300,000 against 11 million is a lot of organic appreciation. We just have one single vacancy to lease there, but super pleased with this portfolio. It's kind of the quiet part of the portfolio. I think a lot of times maybe people think that we've kind of moved away from single family homes, and that's certainly not the case. They're just so much harder to acquire right now because prices are high and interest rates have been high. We love single family homes. We love the stickiness of the renters. You can get really strong rental rates. They're just kind of this quiet, steady portion of the portfolio. And the biggest portion of the single family homes that we own are in Fund One, and very pleased with their performance. So we are to our final slide. Thank you.
You've all gone the distance.
Yeah, to those of you that have stuck with us either here live or listening in the replay, or maybe it was half and half as you needed to get back to clinic or something. So our summary, kind of going back to that first slide when we talked about the highlights, lots of construction. You've seen that as we've kind of gone through every asset of, we did this many units here, and this many units here, and this exterior renovation here, and these toilet upgrades here. And hopefully you get some sense, right? A quarter is only about 90 days. So to do about $5 million of construction renovation in a 90-day period is a really, really, really steady clip. In the midst of all of that, we hosted our annual event, Real Estate Real Life. We would love to have you either here in person or virtually with us in 2026. You can get your tickets at rerl2026.com. And if you join us either in person or virtual for 2026, you'll get complimentary access to the replays for 2025. If you want just the replays for 2025, you can find those at rerl2025.com. Northern Hills is under contract. We'll be closing on that in about 48 hours. We'll be closing on Villages at Essex Park as soon as our HUD loan assumption is through. We closed on Rainbow Plaza as of today. That's our most recent acquisition. Northern Hills is going to be our most recent acquisition here in just a couple of days. Stonehaven Apartments is 100% occupied. Kind of that story's, sort of wrapped up, right? We've done extensive quarterly updates on that one over the last year or so in terms of the construction and then the lease up period. And now we're 100% occupied, and it's now in what's called the stabilization phase, and is cash flowing very nicely. So very excited about that. Huge transformation at Meadow Park. I know I've said it before. At some point we'll do a whole webinar just on Meadow Park so that we can really dive into. I think you guys will enjoy more than the updates than we're able to give when we're talking about the whole portfolio or even the whole Secure Freedom Fund portfolio. Kind of the day-to-day decisions. It's almost like a little documentary of what happened at Meadow Park. And then very pleased with our rent growth in the portfolio, and particularly in comparison to national market norms. Very pleased with the portfolio. In terms of our projections for 2026, we'll have our projected distributions for all of the funds. We'll share that information out with you in December of 25.
That was one of the questions, so make sure we're answering that question there.
Yep, absolutely. Please do log into the portal, blackswan.investnext.com, and make sure that all of your investor information is up to date so that we have a nice, smooth sailing K1 delivery process. It's crazy that it's only the end of October and we're already talking about that, but we know that y'all love to get your K1s on time. And so we do everything in our power to get those out. And one of those things is making sure that all of your information is up to date. If you need anything, you know how to reach us, reply to any of our emails, reach out to Nick or Rachel or I. You can block a time on Nick or I's calendar. Probably the easiest way to find the link to our calendar is at securefreedomfund.com. Right there, it'll say block a time on our calendar. You can link to either Nick or I's calendar. So we're always here if you have any specific questions, need anything. Looks like we got a question that came in. I'm a little further away from the screen than I usually am. Can you comment on the pay structure for the Stagebergs for the Secure Freedom Fund? Do they receive any profit over 10% that is distributed to the LP or their periodic dividends, or do they receive 10% of the ownership stake?
Great question. So we receive no GP level fees whatsoever. There's no acquisition fee, disposition fee, loan recourse fee, marketing promotion fee. There's usually about a dozen different levers that different fund managers can kind of turn to opaquely generate fee income for themselves. And we really don't love that business model. So it's not something that we engage in. We make certain that there's enough profit in the funds to issue those distributions to investors. if the fund does deliver, surplus cash flow, we're entitled to receive that cash flow once that return hurdle is met for investors. In general, though, we're typically just reinvesting in the fund. We'd much rather not have to raise more money than harvest surplus distributions from the fund, but then have to go raise more money. Like that's just more work for us to do. So there's no financial incentive really for us to do that. And we're very mindful about the financial incentives that we create in our vehicles because we're all, as humans, we all do what we're incentivized to do, whether we like to admit it or not. So we've tried to structure that fund in such a way that aligns everyone's interests. And we have created massive amounts of positive equity, basically, in each of our vehicles that protects our LPs. So there's, if you're invested in an apartment building that, there's $2 million of LP equity in that building, and we've added, $4 million to the value of the building. So there's, several $1 millions of value essentially if something went wrong, if the value of that asset went down, there's some sort of additional market decline. Hopefully that answers your question thoroughly and makes sense to you.
We are going for that $1 billion company
Yes.
as quickly as possible. So
Yes,
we are reinvesting. Like, for example, when we do our cash out refi on Meadow Park, we'll just reinvest that. We'll buy whatever.
That's a much easier way to answer that. I should have probably just answered that way.
Yeah.
So we could do a cash out refinance on Meadow Park at this time. We own it with cash. We will just take that money and go buy the next apartment building and then save ourselves. We have to do a lot of phone calls and stuff like that to raise capital. So we'd rather just put that money into the next deal. And we are, I know sometimes people remark on the fact that we're Midwesterners, like we don't have a boat or a plane or anything like that. And I don't know, we have a very comfortable life on a modest income. It actually gets identified on audits sometimes that we don't take enough profit from the fund. Like auditors and stuff like that have identified that from time to time. We're like, we're good. We don't need to earn more income. So
Jenny says it's like feeding the baby. So anyone that is a student of Keith Cunningham, he talks a lot about how, like, for example, the opposite of that would be like a profit first model. For many reasons that are, kind of outside a quarterly update. I actually don't really like the profit first model. I think if you want to build something really big, you have to keep feeding the baby. And that comes from Keith Cunningham, right? You have your income, you pay all of your expenses, you do your CapEx, then you feed the baby, you feed it right back into the business to grow the business as large as possible, as quickly as possible. And that has certainly been our model for the entire time that we've been building the portfolio, and something that we continue to do as we move toward that $1 billion mark.
Someone had a question, is Stonehaven eligible for bonus depreciation? I assume that you mean Stonehaven Apartments, because we broke ground on Stonehaven Apartments prior to the tax law change that brought back 100% bonus depreciation. It's a very astute question, and yes, it is. So when the property is placed into service, that placed in service date is what dictates its eligibility for cost segregation, accelerated depreciation, bonus depreciation. That was actually really complex with Stonehaven townhomes because they got rolling COs on a per unit basis, but just one CO for the entire apartment building. So huge advantage for Fund 4 investors, where we'll be able to distribute, lots of kind of year 2 depreciation as a result of that. And then one more question here. Can you comment on the Minnesota state tax brackets and how they affect payments? So that's probably going to be like, so when you get a K1, it'll be just for the state of Minnesota in Secure Freedom Fund. I'm guessing you're referring to that. There is a state income tax, and you will potentially owe some amount of state income tax in the state of Minnesota. This is going to be the case with most real estate funds and syndications and stuff. Is you're probably going to have to file a state return for where those vehicles own assets. Many funds, they'll own assets in like many different states, and so you either get a composite K1 where you get K1s from many different states. We try to keep it as simple as possible, keep your tax and compliance burden as low as possible. So our expectation at this time is that Secure Freedom Fund will only own assets in the state of Minnesota to try to keep that simple for you. And you'll probably have to spend a couple $100 on a state return. I can't tell you what your tax liability will be, but you'll probably owe some relatively modest amount of tax. So hopefully that answers your question.
And of course, we are doing depreciation, right? And sharing out as much depreciation as possible to offset both federal taxes and then state taxes as well.
Yeah. So. One more that came in here. Great questions. I mean, please do ask questions here. Can you comment on the approximate? I love that we're an hour and 40 minutes in here and people are still popping here. Can you comment on the approximate depreciation amount returned on the Freedom Fund for a 100K investment in 2025? So I love the precision of that question. That's an excellent question. So assuming that the government reopens soon and we are able to close on Villages Essex Park in 2025, because it's possible the government shutdown could last for 6 months or something crazy like that. So, that's a fact that's outside of our control. We certainly want to get closed on Essex as soon as we can. And at this time, if the government opens tomorrow, we should be able to close before the end of the year, no problem. But we would think, and I hate to put a number into a webinar, right? Because if the number's even if the number's better, we still get questions from people. Well, why did I get too much depreciation or whatever? I would throw out maybe 20 to 30%. It could even theoretically be better than 30%, depending on how the numbers shake out, but somewhere in that territory. So if you put 100 grand in, maybe you'll get 30 grand in depreciation this year. That is a approximate number. So do not assume that it could be 10, it could be 40, but 30 might be a good kind of placeholder number to use, just with the way the numbers work or look based on we do very detailed analyses on these. We've spoken with 2 different accounting firms to try to put together those projections, because it is something that we want to have an accurate number for. Now, if we aren't able to close on Villages at Essex Park, that would significantly reduce the amount of depreciation that's shared, because we've raised all that money, but we haven't bought the asset yet with that money, so we're not able to get that depreciation from the asset that would constitute the largest asset in the fund by far. And then also it's important to note that in Secure Freedom Fund, we have a very significant amount of liquidity, like probably 10 times more liquidity reserves than most fund operators might maintain. And we're getting low leverage debt to juice our cash on cash rate of return. So we're able to meet that very high, kind of cash on cash rate of return, that 10% target that we need to hit. What all that means is we yield kind of less depreciation than we might be able to yield if we got maybe riskier loans and liquidity positions. So it creates there's some cash drag on that kind of amount of depreciation that you get, and the lower leverage on the loans also kind of dilutes that depreciation a bit. So those are maybe sophisticated concepts there, but I know there's some operators out there that are promising 100% bonus depreciation year one. We are operating an incredibly conservative vehicle with Secure Freedom Fund. We think there's a lot of uncertainty out there, and we are trying to build an arc that no matter what, we're not going to lose anyone's money. We're able to hit that really challenging 10% fixed rate of return target, so that so we make very conservative decisions that ultimately reduce the amount of depreciation that we're able to share with our investors as a result. So that's a longer answer to that question that hopefully is valuable to you.
All good questions. I think we've hit all of the questions that have come in, but you know how to contact us if you need anything else. Thank you so much for sticking with us live or the replay. We'll have our next quarterly update in Q4. So we'll schedule that one probably sometime in late January after all the numbers and the data come in for Q4. So in the meantime, have a wonderful holiday season. If you'd like to invest in the Secure Freedom Fund, there is still a little room to do so at securefreedomfund.com. We wish you all so well. We are so grateful for all of you. Hope you enjoyed this update. Have a good day, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.